Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast. Today's episode is called Find Your Funny with Marta Ravin. Marta has been sharing compelling stories, producing innovative content, and making people laugh for over 2 decades. She started as a stand-up comic and writer and then transitioned to producing live events, shows, and specials like Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Awards, and she created fan favorite The Long Island Medium for TLC. Recently, Marta started consulting with individuals and companies, helping them find their funny. Thanks for joining me today, Marta.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
Your background is really unique, and I was really excited to chat with you because you've worked on some really iconic shows in the 80s, right, and the 90s. And I love that you transitioned from stand-up comedy to producing those big name shows, and you even were a TEDx speaker, and you are now an EMC and coach, and you do workshops. And so when you stand back and look at your career progression and you look at it as if it were reading a book, it really makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, it does. It finally makes sense to me because for a while there, I'm like, what does this all have in common? Because even when I would explain myself on interviews or just, try to just say when someone say, what do you do? I'd be like, I did a lot of things. But yeah, I looked back on my career and, when I really, started looking at, the common denominator and how all the dots connected, it was comedy. Because in my family, I was always, the funny one at the dinner table, and I started doing stand-up just when I was in college, and then out of school in the 90s, I was doing stand-up in New York, and I was a writer. And then when I started working as a producer on television shows, usually the content was comedy or the people, the hosts were funny in some way. And when I started creating my own shows, I was just naturally drawn to funny people, or my way of producing has always been, to bring out someone's funny as a way of just bringing out their genuine personality. And I would work with a lot of young talent and do that. And then when I started doing speaking, I just kind of leaned back on my stand-up comedy muscles because it's a little bit more complicated than I thought, but at the beginning, I was like, oh, like a TEDx talk is just like grown-up stand-up, and I realized it's a little bit more complicated than that because you have to actually give them some takeaway. But it's definitely, that's my kind of go-to, when in doubt, make somebody laugh. And when I had met a bunch of speakers, and when we'd be hanging out, they would be just, funny, relaxed, just normal people hanging out. And then when they would get on stage, I would see them really freeze up, and that their natural personality wasn't coming through, and they knew it. It didn't feel good to get to them. And so when, we all help each other, and I said, your funny's not coming out, like that story you told me at dinner when your eyes started to crinkle and, you were laughing. We need to take that and put it in your speech. So I want you to do your speech again right now. I'd get them laughing. I'm like, now do your speech. And the difference in that, whether or not we change the words, but just the energy of that. And, really focusing on not yourself, but focusing on what am I giving to another person? What is my job here? My job here is to entertain and inform. And how can you entertain? You can entertain by making someone laugh. So, I realized that, I think it's been helpful to individuals. It's been helpful to leaders who, in our corporate world today, in our, cancel culture world, everyone kind of tiptoes around, and it's kind of hard to be an engaging, funny leader without worrying about offending somebody or crossing a line. So I help leaders of corporations kind of find their sweet spot where they can be themselves and, and relate more to their employees. That's my through line is funny. I figured it out. I cracked it.
Well, how long did it take you to figure that? I mean, obviously, again, standing back, looking at your resume, it makes a whole lot of sense, but it takes people a really long time sometimes to figure out what is that one thing about yourself? What is your why? Why do you exist? What is your purpose? What are you really good at? And how is that aligned with who you want to be? And you did that really naturally through your background. And so it just feels like it works. It works for you. And the fact that you're doing this for others, you're giving back, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I have to say it wasn't all me. I worked with two great coaches. Their names are Gabby and Brian Boucher, and they have a company called The Purpose Company, and they wrote an amazing book called The Purpose Factor. And yeah, and they're the ones who helped me figure out what my TEDx could be and how to apply. But their definition of purpose, which is what I always go back to, is the best of what you have to help others. And so it took me a really long time, so it was this process of like connecting the dots, but then also saying, okay, what is the best of what I have to help others? Like, yes, I can help people like online shop at 2 a.m. Yes, like I'm definitely like, everyone's go-to enabler. Like, if anybody wants a drink at like 3 o'clock on a Thursday, I get the call.
I'm in. Yeah.
And if somebody wants to go ahead to buy something that they really shouldn't, I get the call. But aside from that, I realized it was humor that's what I can do. Like that's my thing. And it's not to say that that's like your only purpose, but
Sure.
this book is wonderful, and I can, give you the link for your listeners. And it's very simple, and you just you go through some exercises, and I mean, they make it simple, and it's a great process, especially for women who are kind of at a certain age or at a certain point in their career, and when their kids are older and they're
Like our age.
Yeah. I know. By the way, I wasn't exactly working in the 80s. I feel like I would have been in a sweatshop. I'm not that old. Yeah, I was definitely at the mall in the 80s and high school.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
We're the same age. I know that. So you're right.
Okay.
90s. My apologies.
Yeah, it's all good. All good. Oh my God, your skin's really good. I thought I had like 10 years on you. Okay.
No, I'm 55 this year.
Oh, okay. So yeah, but yeah. So and if especially women whose kids are out of the house, it's kind of like what is that next chapter? And
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean like it has to be like pro bono work or it's just really taking that thing that you do that Kelly is like a marketing genius, but like really whittling that down. Like what is it? What's that thing that you're always able to do, whether it's with a client, whether it's with a friend, like what is that thing? And then saying like, yeah, like
I can get paid for that.
Right. Well, I can get paid, and I can call it something else.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously a lot of these things do fall under the marketing umbrella because in the world we live in now, everything is marketing.
Sure.
Like I feel like, especially, coming up in television, like there was, the on-air department, the programming department, and then there was the marketing department, and then there was the publicity department, and then there was the digital department.
Yeah.
It's all marketing. We're all marketing. Yeah.
Well, how has your sense of humor helped you in the past?
It's my go-to. During the like 2000s, I worked at Total Request Live for MTV. Yeah. And so I produced a ton of celebrities, and it was a different time. So now when celebrities come on a talk show, there's a pre-interview. You have to pitch a lot of stuff to their people. They come on, they know exactly what they're doing. They've agreed to it beforehand. For some reason, this was not the process at MTV for TRL. We went live every day at 5:00. So they would come in at like 4:30, sometimes 4:45. And you would have, 5 minutes to say, hey, Beyonce, And all your people and your parents, how are you? And Jay-Z, like, so we have this game and we want you to come up and we're going to play down every song you've ever sang. And we've got, a kid who's your biggest fan, and we're going to have you go back and forth and see which one of you can identify the lyrics to your song faster, or some sort of game like that. But, you would really have to pitch it quickly and charm them and, make them feel comfortable and be funny, because, there just was no other way to, you have people like screaming in your ear, like, is she going to do it? Is she going to do it? And it's like,
Yeah.
do it.
Is that a real story?
Oh, that was every day.
No, but Beyonce and Jay-Z, was that a real story?
Oh, every day. Yeah. Cause Jay, when, he first was bringing Beyonce, like, as his artist. And so, first she would come with Destiny's Child, but then when she was a solo artist, it was more like they were showing up together and, they were dating. And so it's one thing pitching Beyonce and her dad, sometimes her mom, but then like when you've got Jay there, and he's all business. And I remember one time I was just pitching Jay something, and it was like this back to school thing that we had kind of like just put together, and it had like a wheel and like all, and I'm like, okay, so, hey, and they never remember me, but even though like I would produce stuff like and, I'm like walking down the hall with him, and I'm like, and we're like, we're really short on time because hip hop time is a different time. And, even though they knew we were live and they would show up, they would roll in, but, no one's rushing Jay-Z. So I'm like, okay, so here's the idea. I can show you in the studio, like we built this wheel and we have, all these different things. And what we want you to do is you're going to spin the wheel. And then, I can't remember the specifics, but I get finished, like, blurting out my thing. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Of course not.
I know. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm like, okay, cool. And like, yeah, Jay's not really comfortable. And he's looking at me, he's like, not going to do it. I'm like, we're going to pivot, and, but not that he wasn't incredibly gracious and nice, but, there was times where it just wasn't going to work. And then there were other times, one of my favorite stories, there was this movie that came out, SWAT. This was like somewhere in the 2000s. They did a remake of like the SWAT franchise and film, and it was with Samuel Jackson, LL Cool J, and Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
And we would oftentimes do like these big entrances. And so they were going to start the show at 5 by driving into Times Square in the SWAT vehicle from the movie. So the movie studio had provided the SWAT vehicle. And we were right in Times Square. So right on Broadway and between 45th and 44th. And when we would do these entrances, the way you would get the talent into that vehicle, because we often did these big vehicle entrances, was they'd come to MTV to our studio, then we would get them down this entrance into like, an SUV, and then drive them around the corner in a black SUV, and then they would just get into that car that was waiting for them. They would drive the 15 feet towards the camera to say, TRL starts now.
Yeah.
So it's rush hour. It's always rush hour. It's, 4:50. I'm in the black car with them, and they're just talking, and, and Sam Jackson, Cool J, and Colin Farrell, they're just talking, and I'm looking at my clock and at my watch, and, that my producers are in my ears, like, where are you? Where the fuck are you? And I'm like, if you can picture New York City, I'm nowhere near like where I need to be.
Always crowded over there.
I am stuck in traffic on 6th Avenue. I still have to turn onto 45th. We still have to make it down 45th. And now we're at like, it had to be like 4:56. And I'm like, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, we're not going to make it. Like, I know we're not going to make it. We're stuck. We're not going to make it. So we turn on to 45th and now we're just stuck and everyone's screaming at me. There was a lot of screaming, in those days. And I just was like, when they're just talking and I just had to be like, hey guys. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, so a little bit of a problem. See how we're stuck in traffic. So
we're going to walk.
Yeah. I'm like, we're not going to make it to the car unless we get out and we run. I said, or we're not going to get there to start, to start the show. And LL Cool J was like, let's go. And like, they come out of the car and they're singing like the SWAT theme song, which like goes da-na-na, na-na-na, na-na-na. So it's like LL Cool J, Samuel Jackson, Colin Farrell running down 45th Street with me, like with my like headset and my clipboard and like, everything like flying behind me with everyone screaming at me like, where are you? Like, we're coming, they're running, and like, so they run and they get into the SWAT vehicle and they, just about, and the VJs are standing there kind of riffing, waiting, to be like, we see the SWAT vehicle coming down and I am just like in such a sweat and fear. And that was like when I would wear heels to work. And anyway, we made it in time, but I mean, I wouldn't say it was like my sense of humor, but it was definitely my, kind of.
You had to roll with it.
Yeah. Just
there were no cell phones to capture the moment, right?
No. And that's the thing. I never, especially now that I have a 17-year-old and I have an 11-year-old. So during those years when I worked with every celebrity under the sun, there was not like, let's take a picture, because you didn't have like, so, I mean, they definitely don't think I'm cool anyway, but even if I had like the photographic proof,
it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter.
Oh my God. That is really awesome. So let's go back to, finding your funny and, you talk a little bit about how you bring out people's natural sense of humor. Can you kind of give us some tips on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's like some just basic elements of stand-up that can apply to whatever you're doing in business. And this I find is, there's bringing out someone's sense of humor, and then there's also using these tips to kind of navigate how to handle being funny in the workplace. So bringing out someone's sense of humor is, I will, especially if I'm working with new talent, we'll just hang out, like it's like, let's just hang out. It would be like you and I, on Zoom or grabbing coffee or grabbing a drink and asking you questions just about your life. And then seeing those moments where you light up and seeing those moments where your eyes start to crinkle and, I really, or you're making me laugh just because you're a fun person. And it's watching that, not making someone self-conscious, but I'm noting it. And then, after we hang out for a bit and get to know each other, now whatever project that they want to focus on, whether it's a speech, a book, or just being a leader, I go back and I said, remember you were telling me that story about, what happened with your friends or, what happened with your family? That is your sense of humor, and then we'll go to like the script or the speech or the book. And I'll say, now with that energy, now let's go to the work. And it's just really reframing it and, just saying that's what it is. It's when you're telling the funny story, or the thing that makes you laugh, or, so what was the last thing that cracked you up, and hearing what makes someone else laugh, you just can tell what their sense of humor is. So there are three elements of stand-up that are always important. So they are reading the room, crowd work, and timing. So that's something that's going to happen no matter what type of stand-up show you're doing. Like I would always get there a little bit early and see how the other comics were doing. So I could see like what the vibe was in the room, what was working, what wasn't working, just what was it really hot in the room? Did somebody just leave? Is there like a waitress that everyone's like interacting with? Like use whatever is in the room. So if you're about to give a presentation in a conference room, it's the same thing. Like get there a little bit early, see what the vibe is, does everyone stop talking the minute you walk in? Is everyone hot? Is everyone hungry? Were the elevators slow? And use all that to be like, oh my gosh, how are you guys doing? It's a furnace in here. Come on, let's get the AC. I always show up with candy, always for like the 2:00 meeting, just chocolate, whatever, just you guys need some snacks, or if it's end of the day, maybe it's like a surprise drink cart. And in the, or in the era of Zoom, also getting there early and this is where the crowd work comes in, and it's just really talking to people, because in a stand-up club, like if your jokes aren't going well or it just kind of feels like you're losing the crowd, you go right in there, So if I'm a comedian and you're kind of busy talking to your friend, I'm like, okay, we're gonna wait till like Pretty Blonde with the glasses is done talking. And then, just like, hi. And then and it's like, what are you guys talking about? And then you just, you really are present in the room. And then timing, like if it's, let's say you're not leading the meeting, but you're in the meeting and, you have the thing you want to say, you want to make an impression, you have this thing you want to contribute, but you can't like be so in your head, like thinking like, I know I want to say this, I want to say this, I want to say this. You really need to know your moment for when to say that. And you need to be able to kind of like say to yourself, okay, either now's my moment, it fits perfectly with what we're talking about, or maybe it isn't the moment. You want to really time, when you interject, and also on Zoom, which makes it harder, but it's, or you can send a note, to your boss or whoever's reading, who's leading the meeting and be like, hey, I really thought about things. There's this, I had an idea. Is it appropriate? Do you want me to bring it up in this meeting? How, if they haven't sent out an agenda, when would be a good time? If not, is there a time we can talk about it later? So, this way of saying like, I am present, I am proactive, but I am understanding the vibe, and I don't want to be the person who like kind of throws a wrench in things because I want to express myself. And also being really, present in, when you're in person in the meeting, especially if it's not your meeting, you're not running it, but so your boss is running it, and like, just being like, okay, my job right now is to support them. This isn't about, it's about me listening, but to support them. And right now they're coughing, they could use water, they look hot. It looks like whatever papers they wanted to distribute aren't there. And, whether or not you're the assistant or, you're the 52-year-old, non-assistant, but just like aware person, you're on it, it's like, you go find their assistant. There's not enough copies. Let me, bring in some water. There's something wrong with it. The tech isn't working. Just be that person. Just be helpful. And it doesn't matter that you're a senior person. It's, it's just really tuning in and being aware of what's going on. So you are a helpful person. It's not about you. It's how can I be helpful?
Where can our listeners contact you if they want to hear more or learn more about your workshops and your EMCing and your hosting and all that great stuff?
Yeah, they can just go to my website, martaravinproductions.com, or hit me up on LinkedIn. Or luckily, I have kind of a unique name. So even if you just remember Marta Ravin and you Google it, something will pop up. But yeah.
I'll put them in the notes.
Yeah, and I'm always especially with, not just younger people, anybody, especially during this time where so many people are pivoting, even if somebody just needs just like a half hour chat and just to help them start thinking of different ways to do stuff, totally obviously free. Just, I karmically like to give back and, help people wherever I can.
I'm hitting you up on that myself. Thanks for chatting with me, Marta.
Thank you, Kelly. This was so much fun.